The foundation of your retirement is a tax loophole written in 1978 for people who didn't need one. The single most important number in your retirement was never designed to hold your retirement. It began as a footnote, a few obscure lines buried in a tax law written for a tiny group of people who already had more money than they knew what to do with. Highly paid executives, looking for one more way to keep the taxman away from their compensation. That was the entire purpose. It was never meant for you. It was never meant for most people. And then one benefits consultant, reading the fine print, noticed something nobody else had, that this little tax favour for the wealthy could quietly be turned into something else entirely. He was right, and the accident he set off became the foundation that tens of millions of people are now betting their entire old age on, including almost certainly you. Congress passes a long, dense tax law, and tucked inside it is a short provision, Section 401, paragraph col. Almost no one notices it. It isn't supposed to be noticed. It exists so that well-paid employees can take part of their compensation and set it aside before the taxman touches it. That's it. That's the whole idea. For 2 years, it just sits there, a dull line in the code. Then a benefits consultant named Ted Benna is trying to solve a completely different problem for a client, and he reads that paragraph more carefully than anyone was ever meant to. And he realizes nothing in here says this has to be only for executives. What if you opened it up to everyone? What if ordinary workers could put in part of their own paycheck and the company added money on top? In that moment, a tax shelter for the wealthy quietly became the blueprint for how an entire nation would try to retire. Benna didn't know it yet, but he had just lit the fuse on the most important financial accident of the century, and decades later, he would say he regretted it. Sit with what Benna actually did, because at the time it looked like pure generosity. He had taken a perk reserved for the people at the very top and found a way to hand it down to everyone below them. The clerk, the line worker, the secretary, they could now shelter part of their own pay from taxes and watch an employer match pile on top of it. It looked like democratizing a privilege. It looked like a gift to the ordinary worker. And for that, Benna became known as the father of the 401k, the innovator, the man who cracked open an executive loophole and let the rest of us in. That's stage one of his story, the discovery, the hero moment. But notice something hidden inside the design even here. This was a voluntary account. You had to choose to contribute. You had to decide how much. And critically, you had to decide what to do with the money once it was in there. From the very first day, the responsibility sat with the individual. At the time, nobody saw that as the important detail. It would turn out to be the only detail that mattered. But here's the part most people get backwards. The 401k did not spread across America because workers demanded it. Most workers had no idea it existed. The engine driving its explosive growth was not employee demand, it was employers. And to understand why corporations embraced this accidental account so eagerly, you have to ask what they were replacing. Because they weren't adopting the 401k into empty space. They were adopting it instead of something far older and far more expensive to them, the guaranteed pension. For most of the 20th century, the company made you a promise, a fixed check, every month. For the rest of your life, and the company, not you, carried all the risk of making that promise come true. The 401k makes no such promise. It doesn't guarantee you an income. It guarantees you an account and whatever happens to be inside it when you stop working. So, as employers froze pensions and steered everyone into these new accounts, something quiet and enormous happened underneath. The risk of retirement slid off the company's balance sheet and onto your shoulders. The market, your lifespan, the timing of the next crash, all of it became your problem, not theirs. That transfer of risk is one of the biggest shifts in modern financial life, and it's a story big enough to stand on its own. I've broken down exactly how that handoff happened and what it cost your generation. In a separate video, it's the natural next watch after this one. But here, the point is narrower and stranger. None of that transfer would have been possible without the accident that came first. The vehicle they used to move all that risk onto you, the 401k, was never built to carry retirement at all. It was a tax favour for executives that one man repurposed by reading a footnote too closely. The handoff gets all the attention. The accident that made the handoff possible gets almost none. And this is where the psychology becomes almost cruel and almost invisible. The system has existed long enough now that it feels like the natural order. People assume the 401k was always the plan, that managing your own retirement investments is simply what being an adult requires. So when someone reaches 60 and finds their account fell short, the instinct is to blame themselves. I should have saved more. I should have invested better. I should have started earlier. But a burden feels normal once it has existed long enough. Something that was deliberately shifted onto you comes to feel like something you were always meant to carry. That low, constant hum of "am I doing enough?" the background anxiety so many people feel about retirement is, in large part, the felt experience of risk that an earlier generation simply never had to hold. It wasn't always supposed to work this way, because it didn't start as a plan at all. None of this means the old world was better in every respect, and credibility demands we say so. Pensions were never perfect. They chained workers to a single employer, because leaving early often meant losing everything. Many were underfunded, some collapsed and took workers' security down with them. The 401k gave people something real in return: portability you could carry from job to job, control over your own money, and for disciplined savers who started early and rode the markets up, outcomes that often beat what any pension would have paid. For millions, it genuinely worked. The point was never that the 401k is a scam or that pensions were paradise. The point is the irony sitting at the dead centre of the whole story. So return, finally, to Ted Benna, the man who found the loophole. The man celebrated as the father of an entire retirement system. In his later years, he did something you rarely see from the architect of a financial institution. He voiced regret. He looked at what his accidental discovery had grown into: the fees, the complexity, the weight placed on ordinary people who were never equipped to be their own pension managers, and he admitted unease about what the accident had grown into. That is the quiet centre of all of this. A provision written for executives who didn't need help became the foundation of retirement for tens of millions who do. A voluntary tax perk became the main thing standing between an ordinary worker and an impoverished old age. And it happened not by grand design, but as the byproduct of one man reading a footnote more carefully than anyone intended. The most important retirement system in your life was never actually designed for the job it now performs. It was an accident. And the only question that really matters now is whether you'll carry it knowing that, or keep believing it was the plan all along. If this changed how you see the account with your name on it, there's a whole series of these. The age you retire, the dream you were sold, the reason none of it was ever really built for you. Subscribe, and let's keep pulling the machine apart one piece at a time.